At 0512 hours local time, 4 American fighters hang behind a KC-46 tanker 200 miles south of Bandar Abbas, finishing the last top-up before the run-in. Unknown to the fighters, a radar 400 miles inside Iran has already caught a whisper of the tanker track. No American weapon flying tonight can reach it, and the man watching its screen has just picked up a phone. Somebody on the coast ahead is about to answer it. The boom retracts. 4 fighters rock in the tanker's jet wash and drop away. 2 F-35As with their weapons buried inside. 2 F-16 CJs riding shotgun off the wings, screaming north at better than 500 knots. Low, dark, silent. In an air defense bunker outside Bandar Abbas, a sector controller stares at a plot that arrived by phone, not by wire. American aircraft, somewhere south, minutes old. He can't put a battery on somewhere. He studies the coastline chart for a heartbeat, picks the sector the geometry favors, points a battery at it. On a ridge east of the port, S-300 crews run their launch checks in the dark and wait for their scope to hand them something to hold. The 4 jets drop lower. The coastline hardens out of the haze, a brown smear becoming hills, then ridgelines, then a country. 50 feet under the jets, the Gulf slides past in the dark, and the 4 aircraft settle onto the run-in line the planners drew weeks ago. 3 minutes to the beach, and nobody in those 4 cockpits has touched a radio since the tanker cut them loose. Behind them, the Gulf is an empty gray blue all the way south. So how does a wire antenna 400 miles inland see 4 jets over open water? If you look here at that antenna curtain on the high ground, hundreds of feet of dipole wire strung between steel masts, you'll see why that phone rang. The Zephyr is an over-the-horizon radar. Its waves bounce off the ionosphere and come back down far beyond the curve of the Earth, out to a claimed 1,800 miles, roughly New York to Denver. The price of seeing that far is precision. A Zephyr track is an error box 20 to 40 miles on a side, refreshed about twice a minute, stale by the time it reaches a phone line. Think of a lookout in a tower who spots somebody moving out at the tree line. He can't tell you whether they're carrying a rifle or a fishing pole. None of that can shoot. The S-300 on this coast still has to find these 4 aircraft with its own dish, and it's hunting for them right now, 2 minutes to the beach. At 0518, the flight crosses the coast east of Bandar Abbas. The F-35's clean. The F-16 CJs low and wide in the ground clutter. 4 sets of eyes carving up 4 different slices of the threat picture. The coastline flashes underneath. Iran at 500 knots. Up top, the battery's dish rakes the sector the fighters are crossing. 4 aircraft inbound at fighting speed, and the dish holds nothing it will call a target. The crew starts arguing with their own hardware. The hardware is fine. The problem is the airplane. 29,000 pounds empty, Mach 1.6 flat out, and 770 miles of combat radius on internal fuel. That's Dallas to Denver and home again without a tanker. 2 2,000-pound bombs and an air-to-air missile ride inside the fuselage. What makes it strange? It doesn't hide from radar. It argues with it. Like your wife, who takes out the trash until you give up. Every edge on an F-35, wing sweep, tail sweep, every panel seam, lines up at the same handful of angles so the incoming pulse bounces away in a tight bundle that almost never includes the way it came. Weapons, fuel, sensors, all buried inside the mold line. From the nose, the whole airplane hands back about as much radar energy as a golf ball. Like a mirror turned sideways to the sun, the beam is still there, just going somewhere nobody's standing. The trick only holds from the nose, though. Wander off heading, and the golf ball grows into something this battery can shoot at. So the flight holds its line and keeps the problem pointed straight at the ridge. At the battery, the operators watch a return that shouldn't exist. Small, low, flickering at an aspect their brief said doesn't happen. It could be a flock of birds, or it could be 4 American fighters. The battery commander does the professional thing. He takes the shot he has. A canister on the transporter erupts and a crack rolls down the ridge. A missile the size of a telephone pole pops 100 feet straight up on a gas charge, hangs for half a beat, then the sustainer lights, and it tips over onto the flight sector and screams downrange. The S-300 PMU-2. NATO calls it the SA-20 Gargoyle. Russia's export flagship, delivered in 2016, and the best missile Iran owns just left the tube chasing a flicker. 2 tons of missile burning out past Mach 6, and for most of the flight, it doesn't hunt on its own. It flies where the ground radar tells it to fly. Picture throwing a football to a receiver you only glimpsed between two buildings. The throw goes where you last saw him. Hold this heading 30 more seconds, and that warhead arrives doing better than a mile a second. 30 seconds out, the flight breaks north into a hard beam turn. The 48N6E2 tears down onto a point in the sky and punches through empty air, then self-destructs over open water. A gray smear against the morning haze, miles behind the formation. $1.5 million of missile, and the only thing it hit was the morning quiet. Up on the crest, the intercept point flashes empty, and the crew starts down the failure checklist. Calm, methodical, professional, and looking in the wrong place. Against a normal fighter, that dish builds a shootable track past 90 miles out. The F-35's nose collapses it to inside 25. The difference between watching a man leave Waco and not noticing him until he's inside Dallas city limits, and the beam turn stretch the guidance updates from 5 a second down to 1 every few. Chasing a rabbit through fog without a flashlight, shining it where he was, never where he cut. The geometry took that shot away from a competent crew before the commander's hand ever reached the key. It was decided 20 years earlier in an American design office by men arguing about panel seams. The reload sequence is already running. The crew has more missiles, a fresh flicker, and a commander willing to spend rounds all morning. The battery stands or falls by one radar dish, and that dish is still transmitting, which is exactly what the F-16CJs were waiting for. An F-16CJ rolls, and a missile screams off the inboard station, clawing toward the ridge at better than Mach 2. AGM-88E Argom, a weapon that rides an enemy radar's own transmissions back to the antenna, and the reason the smartest move that crew has left stopped working years ago. Switch the dish off mid-flight, and an inertial track plus a millimeter wave seeker finishes the run on the last known position anyway. Go quiet mid-sentence, and the man already walking towards you across a room still knows exactly where you're standing. How did the Viper know where to shoot a radar it couldn't see? Bolted under each of those jets is a pod called HTS, the Harm Targeting System, a radar detector that doesn't warn you, it aims for you. And it's been drinking in every pulse off that hilltop since the coast. It never transmits. It just compares bearings between the two jets until the emitter's position squeezes down to a box small enough to put a weapon in. The S-300 spent the last 4 minutes shouting its own address into the dark. Now it's a race. The Argom boring in against the second 48N6 cycling toward its rail. 40 seconds of flight time against a 60-second reload. And nobody in the battery is looking for it. Everyone is heads down on the reload, watching a fresh flicker crawl across the scope, working the same sequence they've drilled for years. The second missile rises on its erector, the dish keeps talking, and they have no idea they're in a race at all. The Argom wins it by 20 seconds. It slams into the engagement radar, parked a football field away from the launchers in a bloom of dirt and shredded antenna panels. And that missile, still on its rail, becomes the world's most expensive lawn ornament. The coastal belt in this sector goes blind. One Argom costs about $1.1 million. The 30N6E2 dish it just erased runs roughly $30 million, and there's no spare on this coast. The Pentagon buys these missiles like an office buys printer paper. Iran had one engagement radar on this coast. 40 miles north, an officer is about to pick up a phone and hear the rest of this morning's bad news. Inside a hardened operations center north of the port, that officer lifts the line to a Hormozgan telecom hub and hears nothing but hiss. He tries the backup circuit. Same hiss. A Tomahawk cruise missile off a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Gulf of Oman punched through the relay's roof at 0430, 50 minutes ago, while this ship was still pouring tea. This is the BGM-109 Tomahawk, sometimes also called Tama Chicken, because it flies so low and has tiny wings. But it punches more like a T-Rex with its 3,300 pounds, 1,000 nautical miles of range at 550 miles an hour, Boston to Kansas City, 50 feet off the ground the whole way. A 1,000-pound warhead for $1.9 million a copy. It navigates by Tercom, matching the ridge lines underneath it against a map in its memory. A fog-bound road that you've driven so many times, you don't need to see it. A modern air defense network is only as